Hello, America. It's me again. Welcome back to our Best Of series while I'm away. This Afghanistan debacle was so bad, and we needed to cover it so thoroughly that we broke it down for you into two different programs. The other night, you saw part one. This is part two. You're not going to want to miss it.
This is where freedom rings.
If you believe in America, if you believe in the Constitution empowers us. It's a new day. America's back. America's back, and America's going to get strong again. We're going to defend America, and we're going to defend our interests.
Liberty's voice, Levin TV.
Boy, oh boy. It matters who is the commander-in-chief, doesn't it? What a disaster, domestically and internationally. And could they have done a worse job on Afghanistan? Wait a minute. It's the most fantastic surrender in world history. The evacuation, 124,000 people are out. We only left behind several hundred, maybe a few thousand American citizens. Where'd they come up with this number 250? Not 257, not 248, 250 perfectly. Oh, 250. 15,000, then 13,000, then 11, then 9. We got 6,000 out. There's only 250 left, and everybody who wanted to get out got out. That is a lie. That is a disgusting, despicable lie. We know it. We've seen it and heard it on television ourselves. You can go on the internet and see people trying, and we're gonna talk about that too. This is one of the biggest disasters in American military history, and I would argue, as Colonel Richard Kemp, who was the commander of British forces in Afghanistan, said this is the greatest blunder since the end of World War II. I have said here before, I've said on the radio, I've said on Fox, this man is a cold-hearted old man. It's all about him. He's a narcissist. He is way over his head. On his best days, he'd be way over his head. First of all, I said that when you look at the border. He didn't go to the border. He doesn't care what his policies are doing on the border. He doesn't care that over 30% of the women trying to get across are being raped or molested. That little girls and little boys are being molested too. That the virus is coming across the border with many of these people because they're not checked. And that you have MS-13. Drug kingpins are sending their people in and on and on and on. That border is overwhelmed. Do you know what, folks? Over 1 million illegal aliens have come into the country in his 7 months in office. And by the time the year is over, it's going to be 2.2 to 2.5 million illegal aliens. Illegal aliens. Most of whom we know nothing about. Almost none of whom have been tested for the virus, while he's going after DeSantis in Florida and his media hacks doing the same thing. He's going after Abbott in Texas and his media hacks doing the same thing. And these media hacks, they're not going to the southern border. And I said then, and even before, this is a cold-blooded man. He doesn't give a damn what his policies are doing. Now look in Afghanistan. Absolutely unbelievable. He specifically said in an interview on August 19th, it's in my head, with George Stephanopoulos on ABC, that if we have to extend the deadline to get every American out, that's what we're going to do. And he said it more than once. And look how he lies. Look how his people lie. Now we're going to use diplomacy. Like that's going to work. When our military was there, it didn't work, apparently, because they knew we were on the way out. He sets this deadline. Then he blames Trump, which is ridiculous if you look at the agreement under Trump. Had nothing to do with this kind of activity here whatsoever. And so you have now these new Gold Star parents and families. They are shocked by what's taken place to their young sons and daughters. And if anything, a president needs to show empathy and compassion. Empathy and compassion. But I want you to watch this. Go.
We said absolutely not. We didn't want to deal with him. We didn't want him anywhere near us. We as a family decided that that was the way it was going to be. In reference to the checking of his watch, that didn't happen just once. That happened on every single one that came out of that airplane. It happened on every single one of them. They would release the salute, and he looked down at his watch on every last one, all 13. He looked down at his watch. And as a father, you know, seeing that and the disrespect and hearing from his former leaders, one of his master sergeants said exactly what you just said, that this was avoidable, that they left them over there, they had them over there and let them down. And that we can't have that. It can't happen ever again.
He's looking at his watch every time. What the hell for? And then others have talked about when they met with him. He kept talking about his son, Bo. Never brought up their sons or daughters. And the pregnant wife of one of the younger Marines who was murdered, he was 20. She was pregnant. He was supposed to go home on September 15th. And she said he kept talking about Bo. Never mentioned her husband once. Now, understand that Bo Biden was actually a good man. Bo Biden was a judge advocate in the military. But Bo Biden didn't die in combat. He didn't die in the uniform. He died of a horrific brain tumor, cancer, brain cancer, which is horrible enough. But that has nothing to do with this. And to keep bringing up your son when their sons and daughters have just literally died is simply unacceptable. To keep looking at your watch throughout the entire process, you got to be cold, man. You really have to be cold. So, Chad, you educated me that this was a non-combative evacuation operation. What is that, and who was in charge of that?
Well, a non-combatant evacuation operation is anytime there are civilians who are non-combatants on the ground in a hostile area. The United States military has a responsibility and duty to be able to go in and rescue them. So essentially, when President Biden, who, like we said earlier, pulled out, and I think a full surrender, our troops out of Afghanistan before the civilians, which was a complete blunder. You never move the military out before the civilians. You never forfeit a military base, particularly with an airfield, before the civilians, because you need an evacuation route. And you certainly don't leave $85 billion in military equipment on that base. When this happened...
Let's just stop a second.
Yeah.
Because to hear you say that, I sit here and I think, you got to be more than a dumbass to do this. You've got to be so hostile to the American military, or so cynical about the American military, and so cynical about what's been accomplished there, that you're going to yank the military first, so the military can't even argue. Wait a minute, Mr. President, we need to hold on to the base. We need this and we need that. I mean, we've got to get to the bottom of this at some point, Chad. And one of the things that bothers me is with this Secretary of Defense and Milley and so forth, I don't know that we're ever going to get to the bottom of it.
When the Taliban started moving, as the military left, was pulled out, and the Taliban started moving forward, Central Command responded by saying we're going to send the 82nd Airborne in. They pulled the trigger, started initiating operations to send the 82nd Airborne in, drop them on Bagram Air Base to recontrol the base, so we'd have another evacuation route and we could pull off our equipment. The White House intervened and stopped that operation from happening.
All right, that's the first I've heard that. You're sure of that?
I'm sure of that. In fact, President Biden has already said that he did that under the advice of his Joint Chiefs. And General Milley said that we didn't need 2 airfields.
So on the ground there, the commanders on the ground were going on offense, and they wanted to protect that base, and Washington pulled them back.
That's exactly right.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And so that was the first major mistake after the primary mistake of leaving. And then the second major mistake was the NEO operation that I spoke about. It's for the military to protect and evacuate citizens for non-combatant evacuation operations. That operation was taken away from the military, where it historically has always been and belongs, and was given by the White House to the State Department. Now, to give you an idea what that means, I mean, I'm a special forces guy that runs a charity nonprofit now. It'd be like telling me that I have to do software engineering for a major company. I would break something. I have no idea how to do it. The State Department has no idea how to do this. They're not equipped to do it. and their perspective of diplomacy is a conflict of interest with this. And so that now the military becomes...
Now let's slow down. What you mean by a conflict of interest is they don't want to do what's necessarily to win the day, which requires military action. They are lobbyists for diplomacy because that's all they do every day.
Separate. We have the military for one reason, and we have the State Department for another reason. That's why we're structured that way. And so to take that away takes that military side of things, that military perspective, and puts it all within the State Department. And so what we've seen happen on the ground is immediately HK Airport is treated like an embassy. The military is treated like security guards for static security at that embassy. And if the American can make it on, then they'll be safe. If they can't make it on, then they're
brilliantly
not.
put. Brilliantly put.
If a military guy sees an American being harmed, he can't engage. Now our military men and women are having to watch the British, the Germans, the French go out and rescue their civilians, and we can't do that. And who does the State Department put in charge of the outer perimeter to check passports and documents through diplomacy? They put the Taliban there. So this was a major blunder for the White House to say the NEO operation now goes to the State Department, and the ambassador and whoever in charge of the State Department there really treated it like an embassy, and there was never any evacuations. From that point on, there was never any effort to evacuate our people and our allies.
Fact is, we even have some of my friends and colleagues in various media platforms say, everyone agreed we should have gotten out. It's the way we get out. And I keep saying, excuse me, I didn't agree with that. What are you talking about? The way we got out was a disaster, of course. Yanked the military first and our citizens. We got that. It's the greatest blunder in American military history. Likely, I had a retired colonel, commander of British forces, right in the thick of it, Richard Kemp, on my show not long ago, and he said, this is the greatest military blunder since the end of World War II. And he agrees 100% with you. He said, that should never have happened. He said, don't tell me those Afghans wouldn't fight. 50,000 of them died in 7 years. And my answer to that has been, they weren't all shot in the back, you know. We have a general, if this story is true, the Washington Post and the book, we have a general who took command of our foreign policy, who went around the back of our civilian elected president of the United States without any basis whatsoever. He never threatened to use the military against China, let alone nuclear weapons. And Milley demands an oath taken to support him? This is the closest thing we've ever had to a military coup in this country. Seriously. This isn't something where a few days pass and we should ignore this. This is something that needs to be investigated right down to the bottom of the pit. And everybody and anyone who is involved needs to be held to account. We have individuals who are charged with felonies for trespassing on the Capitol lawn, not even going into the Capitol building. And they're being threatened if they don't plead to a federal misdemeanor, which will tarnish them the rest of their lives. That's an insurrection? Unarmed people? When you have the head of the United States military, effectively the head of the United States military, making decisions like this based on absolutely nothing, or was it based on something? Now, Milley's going to go up there on the 28th. Here's a couple of questions I would ask him. It's not the comprehensive list, but right off the top of my head. General Milley, you're under oath. Anything you say that's not accurate is subject to perjury prosecution. Did you leak to Woodward and Costa? Have you leaked to other reporters about the military, about military operations, about the Commander-in-Chief Biden or the Commander-in-Chief Trump? I would pin this man down right now. And of course, I would read the specific sentences and I would ask him about them. I would ask him about any further conversations or to expand on his conversations with Nancy Pelosi. He agrees on everything. You know, if you're a general, you think the commander-in-chief is out of control, you resign. You don't take control. You resign. Can you imagine during the Civil War, all the generals who disagree with Lincoln? They say, you know what? And Lincoln was a man who had bouts of severe depression, and you can imagine why. They say, you know, he's depressed all the time. I'm going to go behind Lincoln's back and talk to the Confederacy. I'm going to talk to Robert E. Lee. You think Ulysses S. Grant that would ever cross his mind? ever? Do you think it would have crossed General Marshall's mind or Eisenhower's mind or Patton's mind to talk to any of our enemies behind FDR's back in coordination with the Speaker of the House or anybody else? Do you think for 1 second that would happen? Ladies and gentlemen, I wrote the book, American Marxism. It is unraveling right before your eyes. When a nation gives up on its principles and its morals and its central purposes, fundamentals for existing, this is what you get. You get a Speaker of the House colluding with the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who's contacting our enemies. All of this is unknown to the President of the United States. They're doing it behind his back, and they're creating these lies about he's unhinged, he might take military action, do you have the nukes under control, and so forth and so on. And by the way, Milley is now leaking to reporters, including people around him, to Fox and other networks, and to the media, saying that basically, no, he didn't do this nuclear review because of anything special. You know, it's just one of the things they do. They wanted to make sure the process was okay. It took 10 minutes. Oh, okay. And they're going to come up with all these excuses and so forth and so on. The fact is, if Milley had any guts, Mark, you know, you didn't fight. I said, if Milley had any guts in the position he's in right now, he'd resign. Milley is an extraordinarily dangerous man, even without all this. And he needs to be removed. But does anybody think Biden's going to remove him? The Republicans have got to bite on this ankle like a bunch of Dobermans and not let it go, because this can't be a passing issue. Afghanistan can't be a passing issue. And for the rest of us, we cannot have the Washington Post and two so-called journalists sitting on a story, even if it's 80% accurate, like this for months and months, anywhere from 3 to 6 months. If it's a news story, this kind of so-called journalism has to stop. If you have a news-breaking story that involves the American people, the security of the American people, the undermining of our constitutional order, then you damn well better print that story or talk to somebody, rather than wait around for a payday. And to have a marketing scheme in place, like they do today, to put out the information on the Tuesday before the book's released to their own employer, the Washington Post, the New York Times, and CNN. Then people are all talking about it. Then they wind up on the Sunday shows you watch. To push it even further, then they go to #1 on the lists, and they sell a whole bunch of books. There's something pernicious, sleazy about that when it comes to an issue like this. If you're a journalist, you have a responsibility to give us the news, particularly if it's news that matter. As an example, and I've touched on this, but let me dig a little more deeply. This guy, Milley, was in charge of implementing Biden's orders and the Secretary of Defense's orders respecting Afghanistan. Wouldn't it be nice to know what a head case this guy is, what a power-hungry buffoon this guy is, before his major role in what took place in Afghanistan, a complete disaster? This is unbelievable to me. You have the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs in real time backing up every damn thing Biden wanted to do, basically saying things backing up everything Biden wanted to do. Now he wants a chance to tell his side and set the story straight. Are you kidding me? After the fact? Because it's the greatest disaster in modern American history, whether it's national security or military. No damn general would leave American citizens behind enemy lines, give up $85 billion worth of equipment, and leave our allies to fend for themselves. No damn general would do that. Except this one. Biden is such a serial liar. We cannot tolerate a commander-in-chief who lies like this. It's just unbelievable. And there were other things that I wish they'd gotten to, but I couldn't watch the whole thing. One of the senators who was especially effective, I thought, was Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee. I thought Sullivan of Alaska. I thought Cotton of Arkansas. There were a couple others. I noticed the Democrats wanted to go through memory lane the last 20 years to try and avoid what was going on here, to try and create ambiguity. Some of them. But some of them were okay. but some of the Republicans, particularly Blackburn, I thought was quite good. So many of you didn't see this because you actually work for a living or were doing other things. So I want you to see the full 5 or so minutes of Senator Blackburn because she builds it up, and gets to the points where she wanted to go. Let's take a look. This is today. Go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, we thank you all for being here with us today. As you've heard from all of us, the American people, Tennesseans, are wanting some answers. They deserve to hear your testimony. And I think it is unacceptable that this is the first time that I'm hearing from you in any forum, despite attempts at outreach by both me and my staff, save a few short all-senator phone calls that we have had. And I want to emphasize, all of us here, every one of us, answer to the American people, and they deserve transparency and information regarding this administration's botched and disgraceful withdrawal. Tennesseans are really angry, and as you know, General Milley, Tennessee is home to the 101st Airborne, one of the most deployed divisions in the U.S. military. We're also home to the Specialized 160th SOAR, who were among the last on the ground extracting U.S. citizens from danger in Kabul. Tennessee National Guard units have deployed to Afghanistan at a high operational tempo, as well as providing vital logistical services such as refueling. We are home to more than 400,000 veterans, many of whom have lasting physical and psychological wounds from the time they have spent in service. And Tennesseans are heartbroken over the loss of one of our own, Staff Sergeant Ryan Knauss, a patriotic American who represented the best of all of us in the August 26 suicide bombing at Hamid Karzai International Airport. He made the ultimate sacrifice. So, how did we get here, and how did we get to what has been a complete letdown?
Now stop a second. So you're thinking, Mark, what's this all about? She's laying the predicate. She's explaining, I represent Tennessee. Tennessee has a lot of men and women in this battle in Afghanistan. We lost one of them as a result of this botched withdrawal. But then she begins the process of focusing in. Go.
I've got a few questions. These are yes or no questions, so quick answers are appreciated. General Milley, were there options given for keeping American troops in Afghanistan rather than the unconditional chaotic withdrawal?
Yes.
You presented options, and those options were declined.
There were options presented and debated.
Yes or no?
The decision was made.
Yes, sir. Yes or no is fine. Did you at any point create options for keeping Bagram open beyond July 2nd?
Yes.
Did you provide options for keeping Bagram open directly to the president?
Yes.
Had Bagram stayed open, would our support to the Afghan Air Force have been more effective in your view?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last part.
If Bagram had stayed open, would our support to the Afghan Air Force have been more effective in your view? Yes or no?
Frankly, I'm not sure on that one because most of the Afghan Air Force was at different bases, specifically at HKIA.
President Biden keeps calling it an extraordinary success. We've discussed some of this today. Is leaving Americans behind an extraordinary success in your view? Secretary Austin?
We're not leaving Americans
Yes
behind.
or no is fine. Is the killing of 13 American servicemen and women while trying to secure a chaotic evacuation of the president's own making an extraordinary success?
The loss of any civilian life is always tragic.
Is the fact that we failed to evacuate most of our Afghan partners an extraordinary success, or the fact that we have Afghans bringing child brides, people who are hardly vetted, is that an extraordinary success?
Again, these are issues that we continue to work to get our American citizens out and the Afghans who helped us.
Let me move on. Per Article 2 of the Constitution, the President may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments. Did the president ever require or request written recommendations related to the withdrawal of the Afghan forces? Yes or no? Secretary Austin, then General Milley, then General McKenzie. Yes or no?
I provided our input as a part of a policy process that was very well and deliberately run.
We will note that you didn't completely answer that. General Milley, any written form?
Yes.
Would you make those available to us?
Make it available to the committee upon request in accordance with appropriate classifications.
We will do so. General McKenzie? Yes
Yes.
or no? And you will make those available.
Based on guidance from the Secretary.
Each of you had committed to make those available when you went through your confirmation processes. We'll come back to you for those. General Milley, yes or no to this? Did you talk to Bob Woodard or Robert Costa for their book, Peril?
Woodward, yes. Costa, no.
Did you talk to Carol Leonic and Philip Rucker for their book, Alone Can I Fix It?
Yes.
Did you talk to Michael Bender for his book is Frankly, We Did Win This Election, The Inside Story of How Trump Lost? Yes.
Yes.
And were you accurately represented in these books?
I haven't read any of the books, so I don't know. I've seen press reporting of it. I haven't read the book.
Let's have you read the books and then let us know if you are accurately presented
Absolutely.
and portrayed.
Happy to do that.
Senator Blackburn, we're
All right, and that's when her time runs out. But you can see she's tough. She hones right in. And I bet you're itching for more of that. I know I was. But I had to cut it off because I need to be here. So she got some very interesting information. They put in writing their advice to the President of the United States, as they're required to do by statute, not just verbally. That the advice they gave to the President really did differ from what the President did about retaining the 2,500 to 3,500 troops there. As for the Bagram base, Milley's answer was quite mealy-mouthed. You know, the Air Force assets of the Afghans are in other locations. Well, so what? Our jets move pretty fast. They can get there and get anywhere they want to because we own the skies. The enemy didn't have an Air Force. And you could see that. There was also the questioning today, but what it underscores is that Joe Biden is a pathological liar. He was going to do this no matter what. There was excellent questioning by Tom Tillis, I might say also, in North Carolina. And Tillis was pretty tough. And he made the point that, hey, look, Biden didn't have to follow any deal whatsoever. He canned the Iran deal. He put back in place the Paris Accords. This idea that he had to do this or had to do that because of the prior administration is bunk. And of course, he's right, isn't he? In terms of conditions-based withdrawal, other senators pulled out the fact that there were no conditions when it came to Biden. He gave the deadline. He wanted to get out. It didn't matter what the Taliban did or was going to do. He wanted to get out. So there was some of that too, very, very interesting and useful. When he was asked by Tom Cotton why he didn't resign, good question, Milley kind of turned it around and basically said, you know, the men under me can't just resign. They can't just give up their commissions. I can't leave them on the battlefield and so forth and just resign when I disagree with the president. And it's unfortunate, but all of us sort of are armchair senators or what have you. And I thought to myself, I think what I would have said to him is this. The issue is not whether you resign because you disagree with the president. The issue is whether you resign now. Because there's American citizens in hostile territory. You're the head of the Joint Chiefs. You're to be held to account. Biden's to be held to account. The Secretary of Defense is to be held to account. But I'm talking to you, General Milley. Do you think, as the top general in our ranks, do you think that is something that any general should not object to, should not resign over, the fact that American citizens are going to be left? And so I would have pressed him on that point harder.